Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's Alisha Braché here at Cosmic Gateway, and I feel very privileged and honored to have a very special person here with me today. I'm joined by Rebecca Rose. Thank you for being here and welcome. If you haven't seen, I've done a series of interviews with Rebecca where she talks extensively about her SSP involvement, Montauk, Mars, Planet X, the moon. And today we're going to catch up with her because she's been on a bit of an adventure and settled into a new place. So welcome, Rebecca. So good to have you
Hey,
here.
it's been a while. It's so nice to be back. Yeah, it's really nice to be with you again and just to see you and see your bright face on opposite sides of the globe very much. Yeah.
So I'm so curious to know, and I'm sure so many people are who keenly watch your progress. And so I think the last time we actually spoke and caught up, you were about to do the Secret Space Program conference, and then you were. So how was that experience for you?
No, it was amazing. It was really, I think, the best of the best. You know, I actually haven't had the opportunity to speak at a lot of conferences. So this was like being carried up into the clouds, you know, like going straight to the icing on the cake. It was wonderful. And, the guys at Journey to Truth did everybody who contributed, everybody who came, it was really extraordinary, well done, and a lot of like really good content, good discussions, good energy. So I can't say enough good things about it.
Oh,
yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And that was back in May. So,
Yeah.
right. And then, so after that, like, it's a totally different universe. Before I left for the conference, I was in the midst of like sorting every single possession that I own and getting my house ready to put on the market from West Texas and moving up to Alaska. And that kind of took, that's taken the bulk of several months to kind of accomplish that and complete the whole move and all of that. I mean, it's logistically complex to move to the subarctic, like, but I feel like I'm back where I belong. I used to live in the Yukon and also in Arctic Greenland, and it's the north and the remoteness and the great wild of the north has called me back for a long time. So I finally had an opportunity to take advantage of like an open window through which to fly free.
When did that calling sort of come for you to move back?
It never left. Like I left the Yukon in 2016. And it never stopped. I never wanted to leave. I kind of went down to do a mission, as some of you guys might know, to kind of make a journey with my father. And through that journey, at the end of his life, all these memories started coming back about space. And if I hadn't gone and done that, I wouldn't have any of these memories. It's like I had to commit to that chapter.
Speaking of which, I've thought a lot about that, like your journey and how in the event of passing of someone who was sort of directly involved, and how the memories start to surface after that person has passed away. Can you speak more to that? Because I guess I was thinking around when the Queen passed, because I had a bit of an experience the night, well, it was nighttime in Australia when she was announced that she had passed, and I had thought into that about the directness or the indirectness of how that may affect the collective. Can you speak to why you think that is, or whatever?
Well, I can speak from my experience just with my father, who was really key in why I ended up in the programs, because he worked for the military industrial complex with a top secret clearance in the naval intelligence and so on, Lockheed and etc. It's like it becomes safe to know when they're on their last stand here in this embodiment, and it becomes accessible again. At least for me, it became like almost like they're moving on, and so I can move into this transition of knowing instead of forgetting within myself. And I've noticed that on a couple occasions with my memory field, as people pass who were handlers or abusers of some way or part of the story, then I can feel I guess I said it already, safe to know what I know, and I'm not in danger of any kind of retribution or anything. Yeah. But I don't know, as far as like the reference to things in the collective with somebody like the Queen passing, that might be a little bit different. And maybe not. It's like when there's we could say like the veil is lifted, somebody's moving, and it creates that ripple in the tapestry of the collective psyche. So it's kind of interesting how that might unlock things for people. Yeah.
It's interesting energy, because just as we're recording this, we just passed the partial eclipse and new moon in Scorpio, and I had been feeling into, probably the last time we spoke, I felt like as we hit Scorpio season, I felt that would be a sort of a big segue into exposing some of the darker, more like sexual abuse type of themes throughout the collective. That was kind of my feel into it. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think we've kind of didn't sort of plan to record today, but I think it's probably a good segue to start bringing some of these topics back in and talking about them and helping people. I think through watching other people's conversations, so much can come up for yourself if there's memories and things like that. But I think the question I have for you was, did the memories start to surface after he passed, or was it as he was preparing to transition?
It was like the whole year before, and a little bit more like, as he was sick with cancer and a variety of problems health-wise. And as he got weaker, it was like my memory's getting stronger and stronger as he was kind of slipping away. So it didn't have to wait till he was actually physically gone, but it was certainly couldn't have happened 10 years ago. And I'm sure it correlates with my own progression, like where was I on my path and what had to happen for me to get to that point too. But no, it could happen in the time leading up to a death as well.
Do you think there's some sort of energetic cord that, I don't know, I'm just sort of, is that what sort of happens and then it gets like thinner and releases, or I'm just curious of the energetics. When you first had memories, like what was your human mind, what was the processing around that when you first started to have the like how did you sort of
I'm like kind of catching my breath. Like some of it is so, because some of my experiences, we were talking about this before we started, are so horrible. Like it caused me a lot of cognitive dissonance, a lot of denial, like this can't be true, and a lot of really rattly, shaky, hollow, like even kind of dissociative, I'd go through like these little states for a few days or maybe a few weeks where things were spilling up and over, and it was like all I could do to just work with whatever was there, and that's fine. Like maybe I think that some of these, when we are faced with a lot of traumatic memory, it really needs to be front and center. Like I had to kind of put things aside so I could just cope with what I was experiencing. So
that's a lot to go through in like the passing of a parent, and then having those memories surface. Like that's a lot.
It was so much. And I see, the clients I speak with are, the people I work with who've been in the programs or have like abduction memories or something. It's very similar. I've talked to so many people, I could say that it causes a lot of upheaval. And sometimes the reason that people, we can want to know and we can not want to know. And those two aspects of the personality exist side by side, causing this push and pull. Like there's a reason, maybe it's just not time for you to know yet, because you will have to put a lot of things on hold. Is it time for you to have to be, are you able to kind of spend quiet time with this and process a lot of emotions? These are good questions. They're kind of about the process of and the inner plane of what goes on, not just like the story of what happened, but what is it like to begin to know again. Yeah, especially after, I mean, for me, I didn't even, I mean, if you would have said like anything about ETs to me like 15 years ago, I would have been like, that's a bunch of BS, you know, like, so there's that whole level too of like having to catch up with my own, like making a journey with my own belief system. Like if you don't even believe that there's life off planet and et cetera, et cetera. So your whole, it's not just like what happened to you, but how do you, your whole framework of how you view the world is going to change very radically. At least in my case, it had to.
Did you have any?
I had a lot of catching up to do.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Did you have any interest in ETs or like as a child, or did that only just come on in the last 15 years? Like,
well, interestingly, I noticed I had an adverse reaction to anything related to extraterrestrials and sci-fi, because my brother and my father were very on that page. And I would just pick up one of the books in the house, like some stupid sci-fi thing, get this shit out of my face. I hate this. Like it wasn't like I was neutral. I was very like, oh, like revulsion. And I can see why that like was passionate rejection of that kind of information. Why I had that response.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And even though I'd had experience as a child, you know, with beings through the etheric realm, it was like I don't know what happened. It was like it was all behind this wall somewhere else in a vault.
I have a throwaway question. It's only because I had some ideas of things to do, and I like putting pieces of the puzzle together and listening to different testimonies, and I like to look at correlations. And I've noticed that a lot of people's experiences tend to happen around the age of 8 or 9. I've noticed a common thread around that, and I know when I'm going to throw in a linear thing here because I know it's not linear, but something just came to me and occurred to me. I was like, oh, well, if you look at like 8 or 9 and then you like add 20 years to that, then that steps someone into their Saturn return, because Saturn return.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Like, I wonder if there is something to that, you know, then obviously in your Saturn return, a lot of things change in your life. There's a lot of upheaval and getting on your path. And I was like, I wonder if there's strategic to that, or it's just a coincidence. I'm not sure. It was just interesting pondering.
Yeah,
so
could be.
I do have another question. I don't think I've ever asked you this, but it's always been my curiosity, you know, around the times where you were in the programs, what was life like for you in this reality, in Rebecca, in her human experience, being, you know, because I think, you know, we talk a lot about what happens off world, but you know, what were you going through in this space, being that, you know, your consciousness was being utilized elsewhere? What was that? You know, is there things that you can kind of look and go, you know, were you experiencing like energetic bleed through at that point? Or
I was so heavily dissociated, I don't really think I noticed anything, because it's almost like, again, it's like behind this veil somewhere. I was certainly having problems, but not conscious memory that I'm aware of. I was just not well adjusted. I was socially very dysfunctional, and I was not emotionally well. I think just that this schism and the fragmentation, and I was trained for that. I was handled so that would be part of the outcome for me psychologically, to be extremely dissociated. Yeah. And there's places where after I came back from all those years out there in time and back, you know, when I was taken when I was 9, I realized that whole year of 5th grade, I don't remember anything. It's almost like I was so yeah, like between here and there. And there's no, I have this like picture book of like childhood stuff, and there's no pictures even from that school year. I don't even know where I was. It's kind of disorienting. So I don't know if I answered your question exactly, but I wasn't really having like bleed through stuff that I remember. I was so, and I think all of the highly fucked up things that were happening were so normalized for me. If you don't have a frame of reference for what a kind, loving environment is that is stable and well regulated, and a sense of belonging, you're not really not going to know the difference. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'll jump back a little bit, because you mentioned like you've gone through some of your dad's stuff of recent time. Is there anything that you feel that you can share about what recent things that you've uncovered while going through some of his possessions?
Yeah, let me think about that. It wasn't until I had cause to lay things out, document side by side, and really pore over the material, like how are these dates lining up, and who was he, and the top secret clearance stuff, and then coincident with his work with the Navy. At the same time, he was working at a place called Sanders Lockheed. It's really sobering to look at all that. Like, it's one thing to have all these memories, but then there's another whole level of like, it doesn't give me like point blank proof of what I went through in the SSP, but there's some pretty loud banging and clanging leading into, you know, like, hey, there's a reason why you were probably vetted. And he had everything to do with it. But until I had this paper, all these papers in my hand, you know, he went to the New England Aeronautical Institute, blah, 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 blah. All of these little things begin to add up into a bigger story with a lot of information, almost like a constellation of meaning unfolds, creating a much bigger picture. At least for me, I had a framework upon which to, or an armature upon which to hang all of my experiences that made sense in a way, like gave greater context to all of it. Yeah. And he started to reveal a little bit about what his job was and what his, you know, I didn't even know he had a working with that.
Just gonna pause there.
He was looking at before he died. That's how these guys are. They aim to be absolutely. Oops.
Oh,
I think it just lost.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah, there we
have
go.
to go back like a few sentences, because as soon as you started talking about it, the internet just went really sketchy.
Oh, I'm not surprised.
You were saying he started to talk about it, and that's when it started to.
Yeah. Anyway, he just had revealed more of his. He had traveled a lot, and I don't know how much we want to talk about him, but he traveled a lot when I was little, and we never were allowed to know where he went or what he was doing. And you know, he'd mentioned working, you know, projects with NASA and the CIA, going to CIA headquarters for work. And I'm going, where the F was I? How come I didn't know any of this? Of course, they're not supposed to know. That's part of the plan, is you don't know.
Yeah.
But like the mystery man quality that he always maintained. He was a brilliant mind with very few social skills and so on and so forth. And it all just fits in. Like, I get it. And he, you know, after I watched him drink himself to death, basically. I mean, after I returned from the programs, I wonder, was it coincidence that from the time I was 10 on, he was in a bottle. He was drunk. And I think he eventually lost his job with the company because of that, back in the early 90s. I was taken to Mars and the whole 20 and back, blah, blah, blah. That was in September of 82. So, and I was 9 again.
There's that 9 again. I think we've lost Rebecca. All right, we're back. And so as often when we start to talk about these topics, it can have a bit of interference with the internet and technology, but we're back again. Interesting, both you and I had to reboot our computers
You
today.
did too?
Mhm. Yeah. Something about that.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yes. So I guess let's get into the topic that I was really curious to hear you share about is this whole aspect of twins in the program and trauma bonding. And
Yeah.
I think from my own experience and people that I've worked with, I find this topic so fascinating. So I always love to hear you share your experiences, because I know initially you have your husband on the Light Alliance ship from Procyon. I get that right? um, and and initially, you know, when you were asked, you didn't have any sort of recall other than that, and then that's since come online.
Oh, you mean about the twinning? Yeah.
Yeah. So how did that happen?
Yeah. Oh, I can feel myself kind of, yeah, I got to shift gears here. The how it came about was mighty odd. So I was out walking. This is when I still lived down there, and I was out walking on some big open wild land that I really enjoy. It's completely free of EMF and out in the middle of nowhere. And I felt this male presence behind me and on my side and on my left as I was just walking. And I had been thinking about the mantid caves on Mars, where we did I and some other, I hate to say super soldiers, combat slaves, we were patrolling and we had work to do over the mantid caves. Anyway, I was thinking about that, and coincident with that, I felt this male presence behind me in the etheric realm. So not like a guy creeping up behind me, but like, you know what I'm saying? And I could see him very clearly, like the whole, his body type, his hair, his clothing, his shoes, like everything was very photographic except for his face, which was all like pixelated. If you altered a photograph, so you keep an identity secret. And he said, after a while, I was just observing the energy, like, what is this? It's a new signature I don't recognize. And yet I know this person. I don't know who it is. It felt protective. And he said, you saved my life. You saved my life. And I'm going, I really don't think I saved anybody's life. I barely saved my own. But anyway, so over the coming weeks, it turned out that this was, his name as I know it is Dean. He also had an alter out there that went by other names, but we were, making a long story very short, we were twinned psychically and through trauma bonding, intense, inhumane, cruel torture. That was part of what they did with us. And this happened at Naval Station Great Lakes between Chicago and Milwaukee. And we were both about the same age. I didn't know him at all before that. And when I say twins, we're not a blood relative at all. I'd never met the boy before in my life. But from that point, we were kept in cages and we were made to love each other. And we were made to harm each other at the same time. We were made to watch each other be harmed by the programmers, the masterminds of the whole sick system. It's this weird psychological kind of blackmail that they use to get you very connected to this other person, this other child. So you feel like they're part of you, that you're part of them. Your body is wed, your mind is wed, your psyche is wed. You can see together more than you can see apart, because we became psychically very powerful together. And they sexually mated us when we were very young. And they make you eventually betray each other. That's how this is. And I've said this before in my interviews about this topic. All the ways that they do this are taken out of the Illuminati playbook. And it's a very sick system that is used in families, the bloodline families, to create a certain outcome and a mind fracturing and a really sick tally of psychological currency that's used to destroy the minds of children. Yeah, I could go on and on about that. I won't. I'll spare myself in the audience, but it's kind of what is done to create mind fracturing for a single person, to splinter the child, boy or girl, and then create psychological fragments that can alter, that can perform a job. And meanwhile, the rest of the psyche doesn't necessarily know what's going on. You become programmable. And in this case, they were doing it to us treating us almost as one unit. And then from there, we went to Mars, and we're groomed together and trained together. And there's a lot there. We worked as a psychological unit together. Oftentimes there would be, I remember at least 7 of us who together worked as a team. A lot of times we were just patrolling the bases, but when we went on these missions to the Mantid Caves, Dean and I seemed to function as doing psychic recon together. Before we would physically go, we would look at the situation almost like a remote viewing. And that was part of the work that we did for the whole team and us together. So we were dressed exactly the same in these suits, very high-tech weaponized suits, black with a collar and very like a sleek black tight fitting thing, very weaponized. Yeah, gosh, I don't know. Yeah, it's a little, it ended poorly. I can say it ended poorly. And you might know the story there, but he was eventually had to perform the ultimate betrayal. And the betrayals with us they didn't end when we got to Mars. Things just continued in the same vein. And it wasn't, I never really believed the whole thing about, the Mars colonies being run by psychopaths. That's been said by another prominent figure early on in this whole movement to bring SSP stories to light. That was, I remember hearing that. And then when I got all this information back through Dean, I can't say it better. Run by, I don't know where they get these people to perform these roles. I think they're also psychologically manipulated themselves. So yeah, we could go into other parts of this, but yeah, that's a lot for people to digest, I think, right there. Although I think the story of twinning isn't, in our circle, in the disclosure community is kind of known. I didn't know that much about it I certainly had never researched it. But if you go back to Mengele, his experiments in Auschwitz, in Nazi Germany, this was part of what they were doing with twins, with biological twins, to see how they could make the twins function as a sort of superhuman unit together. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very sick. It's very sick. So I don't know if I told you anything you didn't already know about my personal story or the twinning operation, how they turn out that product.
I guess I'm curious to know your thoughts on, being that you're not biological twins, is there, before the process of trauma bonding, is there an energetic signature that is very similar between you and Dean that creates that amplification of the psychic abilities? Mm-hmm. Like, is there, people talk about twin soul, twin flame, that type of.
Right. Well, so in my case, they created that. They groomed that. They groomed us for that. They made that happen. And we might have had a natural proclivity, maybe some, psychic ability and this and that would have made us somewhat compatible. I'm sure they vetted us for a reason together. But they created it as like in a lab, they were creating that.
And yeah, this may be obvious to some viewers and maybe not. So the purpose of doing that and then putting you out on mission, like, why would they group people together and bond them? Like, what
exactly why?
Mm.
One of the, because I had, it's a great question, and it's one I had too as I was going through these really quite difficult memories. Part of it is that if you love somebody on the mission, you're going to have a successful mission. They want you to care about that person and for everybody to come home alive. You're going to apply yourself with extra gusto to the mission. If you're the one thing you love in the whole world is part of that mission, the one bright star in all this land of darkness and depravity, you're going to be like, no, you're in.
And the process, sorry.
Yeah.
It's hard for me.
Yeah.
And the process of betrayal, like, is that just part of more mind altering type of
yeah, absolutely. It's the most, if you take everything beautiful about human relationship and destroy it bit by bit by bit, it makes you so everything in your mind is so destroyed, everything in your heart is so destroyed. You become kind of psychotic yourself, and very much it's just continuing the programming, continuing to make you malleable to their desires and their ends, their outcomes. You wouldn't think they'd, with everything they do, you wouldn't think that they needed to do any more. I also have to admit that from what I've observed, there's a sick sadistic pleasure that is gained by the people in power. I mean, it's an enjoyable thing for them. It's hard to say that, it's hard to hear that, but that is also, there is no purpose other than their pleasure.
I mean, you probably can't answer this, but how common is this twinning in the programs?
Yeah.
Like is it predominantly paired, or is it?
I actually am not sure myself. I haven't spoken actually, I gotta think about this. I don't think I've spoken to anybody at great length or in depth about their own twinning experience. And like I said, when all this came through, I didn't know too much about it. I hadn't heard too much about it. And I had to start digging around to corroborate what I was remembering with other information that might be out there, because it's so twisted. It was hard for me. Again, we go back to like cognitive dissonance. Like, this was hard for me to hold. I was like, I could bear everything, remembering what had been done to me. But if you make me watch the person I love be destroyed, be harmed, be tortured in front of you, I mean, come on. Now, it takes it just to the inhumanity of this, the cruelty of this, to a whole other level. Yeah. So I don't know how to answer your question. I don't actually know how common it is. And I'm sure I'll be discovering more of that as I, just the rest of my life is devoted to understanding all the context of this information and gathering as much as I can about my own experience. There's still a lot left that I don't know. For as much as I do know, there's a lot left untapped.
And
I mean, have you spoken to other people about the twinning aspect? Yeah,
I think it's the vast majority. I think that's why I'm so curious about it. I think it's been a big part of my own personal experience, and I've kind of fell into doing this work of divine counterpart, divine connection. It is, like, I would say, a high percentage of the work that I have done for years, and then over the last couple of years, seeing a lot of couples who have been used in programs, and this, the consciousness that's been fractaled and goes into underground facility bases and milab and things like that. And it's quite often I see, it's a trend. It's not like, I don't want to paint it as like this is, but quite often the female will come into the memories first, and then the male counterpart will be quite traumatized and fractaled, and quite not in awareness, and then that process starts. And it's fascinating to me of how the soul signature and resonance is very similar, you know, and how enhanced the telepathy is. And I know that
the telepathy is like, not, sorry, I just got really excited, like interrupting you, but the telepathy is like nothing else I've ever experienced. And I know you know what I'm talking about. It is like when Dean and I were communicating with, I was communicating with some aspect of his very wounded self and then other aspects of his higher self. And the telepathy was like, I mean, back when he introduced himself, when I first got these memories back with his help, it's like I couldn't tell who was thinking the thought, thinking the sentence, thinking the communication. Was it me or you? Wow. So anyway, go on, please. I just got really fired up.
No, it's such a truth, because I know from my own experience, like how, and telepathy comes in different ways. Like it's form of emotion, thought, feeling, like energetic, you know, and I know because I have a cue of like how to start the telepathic process that I have with another person who is aware of that. And when that signal goes off, the conversation that goes back and forth, it is very hard to decipher what is yours and what is theirs, because it's just a stream of consciousness that's, you know,
yeah.
It's but it really does enhance people's awakening process, coming back into, you know, soul remembrance. But I think, you know, I've come into this theory based on my own experience, and some things that I've seen through other people is that a lot of people will go through, you know, more than just one soul connection, on if that's their path of, you know, awakening that they choose. Quite often they come into quite a traumatic relationship, and I think that can be part of, you know, the trauma bonding.
Yeah.
Because unconsciously there's this energy, you know, if memories haven't been uncovered, there's this like traumatic response of being in each other's field that just starts to bring up so much, yeah, so much, you know, and it doesn't make a lot of logical sense of just how much releasing occurs just being in the presence of that. And then there's other connections that can bring a more soothing, softer, gentle, nurturing component to it. So, you know, I've kind of toyed with this theme around dark twin, light twin, you know, based on the interactions that you have in various programs. Not to say that, you know, and I know that's triggering for some of my clients, so I'm sorry, it's not the case in all, you know, soul dynamics, but I have seen that quite a bit. And I like to pick apart and understand that, the nature of that. But I mean, you up until this point, you haven't been in physical contact with Dean.
Correct. And I have been listening in, you know, what is, because actually people have been asking, like, so what's going to, have you ever met this guy? Like, is he making himself known in your physical life now? And whenever I tune into his energy, it's like there's this busy signal, like he's keeping, you know, that neurotic busyness we do when we don't want to face something. He's kind of, it feels to me that he's in a process of, and it's kind of natural, faced with a lot of SSP memories and the collision that it creates with your like normal life. He's kind of, you know, like if I go into this, it's going to destroy everything and that I have going for me right now in my regular life. So, do
you think that oh, sorry, I don't want to interrupt.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just curious, do you think that the eruption of the memories that were wedded together came back at the same time for both of you?
That's a really good question. I don't know. I'm not sure, because it's like almost like I'm, like I said, communicating with various different parts of him. Like he's come to me dressed as his super soldier aspect, right? And that energy is like, whoa, it's very different. And then his just different, like this really wounded, like I said, a very wounded, like an animal screaming in pain kind of aspect of his being. And then the higher self aspect coming in. So it can be hard to differentiate. Like, what is he actually going through right now? I think it's a lot of normal kind of it's just part of the process, you know. It's like we try and shut Pandora's box, but we can't really keep it closed once it's been cracked. The lid's been cracked. Yeah, I feel too like you made a good point there about. I mean, let's just say the lighter side of it is that we once twinned. You really, and if you do have, whether it's psychic contact or in physical, maybe you meet down the road, many years down the road, we unlock each other. We unlock each other's potential like you would not believe. Like there's, you know, like the healing is entwined. So you can, it's almost like you can go farther on the journey if you can connect with that person again to unlock your own latent abilities and your own basic goodness, you know, comes forward when you begin to journey together in some way, whatever it might be.
Yeah, it's really a powerful amplification.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think it accelerates it double or tenfold, like just that coming into shared resonance. It's such a powerful thing. Do you feel like both of you served the 20 back at the same time, or
yeah,
was it? Do you think it was precisely, you know, in and out, or is there some? I mean, it's so hard when we talk about time and linear time.
There's a little complication with that. In this case, I mean, I might have to skim through how things ended. I don't know how long. I've got, you know, I said I don't have all the memories that I would like to have back. It's an ongoing, lifelong thing. So ultimately, he was made to kill me. That's the ultimate betrayal. His kill command alter, who I call Neil, who I know is Neil, who would be activated for battle, basically. They activated the kill command. He used a weapon on me at point blank range. And that was how it was always supposed to end. That's planned from the beginning. So he was framed for my murder and incarcerated on Mars. And I don't know what became of him after that. I suspect I will learn more. So that is to say, I don't know at what point he served out time on Mars in a prison. Was he returned to like regular duty or not? I don't know yet. And you make me realize I really want to know that. To be clear, I was a clone. So it didn't end my service. But see how complex this is psychologically for both of us. And that's part of the game. Like, again, taking this back to the playbook written by the Illuminati about how the twinning works. It's basically a twinning Bible. Ultimately, one of the twins will be forced to kill the other. That's written. If you look in the literature that like Svali has left, she was an Illuminati programmer herself, and other things on there. I think it was Fritz Cisco Wheeler maybe and Fritz Springmeier, some of their work together revealed these things. It's like the script, that's how it plays out. So yeah, I'm sorry, this is so, I mean, it's so dark, and I have processed a lot of emotion around this. And it's one of the reasons that Dean came to me, because he, on some level, subconsciously, maybe not part of his thinking, you know, guy in the world self, but he felt like so caught by that final act, which wasn't his really choice, like this whole program and how it played out. And he felt himself very responsible. So understandably, it eats you alive, like thinking about that. And so they're acting out this whole victim perpetrator thing. And because we're sharing a mind stream, who's the guilty party, who thought what, who did what, who's responsible. It's this whole psychological mindfuckery happening. Yeah, so, but again, like the light side is there, not to try and get away from that level of darkness, but to also say that there's brightness here, because we both made it out, and we can, I think we can become stronger together. Even if I don't ever meet him, I think there will be more communion through the the etheric realm.
And do you feel like that just through the etheric connection and the dialogue and the telepathy, has that already brought such a sense of healing and amplification to you?
Yeah, it's brought, what has it brought to me? You know, it brought me an incredible amount of pain at first. Yeah, I mean, I felt so naive, like I hadn't recognized this. It wouldn't have come up on its own. I think he had to show me. It's brought up a lot of complex emotions. Yeah. And I do think it's pointed back to the indelible strength of human spirit. Like, that maybe sounds corny, but man, look at what's been done to humanity over time and the things the collective has survived. And that so much light still exists.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Through all the trauma and the pain,
Yeah.
love does come back and prevail. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Where are you at in that process of unpacking that? Do you feel like you've come into a place of love and peace, or is there still pain that sort of comes up when you connect with the different aspects
with Dean?
Yeah.
You mean? Yeah. No, there's a piece. You know, it's come in a greater package of making a greater peace with everything that happened to me. Like, I see more of the cosmic perspective, if you like, you know, about it. And it's just, as you've heard me say before, I think I signed up for all of this so I could really understand through my own experience how this whole sick system has operated for a very long time. Thus, we become the dismantlers of said system. You can't do it if you don't know deeply all of its sordid details. Yeah.
I'm currently, I've mentioned this in other recordings, I'm currently in the process of writing my book and my story, and it's when you start to thread all the pieces together and you see things from a very different perspective. And I highly encourage everyone to write their journey, because I think it gives so much.
Yeah.
Whether you do nothing with it, whether, you know, whatever, just that healing process. But my whole journey began because I kept waking up to reoccurring memories, past life memories of being with a man, and it had a very World War II vibe to it. Like, there were soldiers and Nazis, and I knew that I had to find that place, and it took me a couple of years. I traveled, and eventually I found that place. Being in the south of Brazil, I found the exact train station. I found like a little town. I found like everything exactly as it was, just many years later. And it wasn't until like just this week I was like, it occurred just at the ending of World War II, and I was like, oh, the Nazis went to South America at the end of the war, into parts of Argentina, and that's kind of close to where I was. And so I feel like the journey that I've had through the programs almost started then and then came into this lifetime. So it's fascinating to see that, like, was that sort of a preparation, because I died quite abruptly in that memory. And then sort of
the relationship with the other, let's say, was the strong theme that drew you in. Is that right?
Yeah, because I knew I had to. My question was like, what is my path? How am I here to serve humanity? And it would always come back. It had something to do with, South America and meeting someone, and it was a quest. It was a quest, and that's been a journey that's unraveled now over like 13 years, and it's taken a very different twist that I didn't foresee, and that's okay, and I've come to peace with that now. But you know, it's allowed me to uncover so much memory and so much devastation, so much trauma and heartbreak, and you know, and then to come back into a place of peace. But you know, like it just, I guess it poses that question of like, obviously on a soul level, we signed up, you know, you say that all the time, you know, I signed up to experience all of this. And you know, is there entry points from like, you know, the preparatory lifetime into this one that kind of anchors it in? Because I've heard many times theories around like, if you die in a certain country, you'll be reborn in that country. And I always felt like Australia wasn't my home, but as soon as I got to that place, I was like, this is my home. Like I felt, yeah. So it's such a fascinating journey. Anyway,
wow.
Just
and you're writing it all. So you're writing it all down now. Is that right? You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think it'll be about 300 pages. It's almost it. Hopefully, I'm going to have it prepared to be published in about a month or two.
Yeah.
So, sorry, we sidetracked there. You may not know, but I always like to throw out this question: like, where do you see humanity's at this point of this dismantling, unraveling?
Oh, it's always a big question, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, what I see, what I vision is maybe not what we might literally be honing in on if we look at what's happening superficially, like on the surface. I mean, of course I see us, you know, vanquishing the darkness bit by bit. I don't actually, myself, I don't pay very much attention to what's going on in like political arena or like current events so much, for better or worse. I think it helps me work with that co-creative energy for getting out of these chaotic times more than like slathering dense energy all over myself all the time. So I don't know if I'm the best one to ask like what's playing out here, but I can say always making it relevant to my own experience. You know, I look at how far I've come just in the past couple of years, man, there is some major change going on. And I'm not the only one doing this work. You're doing it. And both of you and I are people who help others. So everything we're talking about here, your own experience, which we'll find more about in your book, that has enabled us to also serve the people we work with to a better degree. And that it's just this beautiful ripple effect. So affecting the whole collective tapestry of light.
I was going to ask you, how is your work been? And like, I don't know if you're still doing now, or are you going to get back into running the support groups? I know that was something that you were doing. And, you know, I can't recommend highly enough to connect with Rebecca if you feel guided for support, because I know you're now offering live sessions back again now that you're
a
little bit more.
So I had to let things, you know, I was still seeing some people while I was traveling and moving up and all of that and doing my audio sessions, but I'm actually back doing, you know, the full-time live sessions are available again. And so that's exciting because I've not, you know, that's been on hold. And I'm actually making, for those of you who have been following my YouTube channel, I'm actually making another video. It should be out in the next couple of weeks. Yeah, it's been a lot. I'm not great at keeping up with social media at all either. So I kind of lurk in the shadows somewhere, and maybe that'll change. But things are coming back online for me just because they can. You know, I'm settled into a new place now in a new location. So, and I'm starting obviously to do interviews, and I'm always happy to talk to you again. I just talked to Tony. Tony would talks with Tony Rodriguez. We were on his Patreon channel, and I'll be up soon with Michael Sala for a series of interviews there, and several other people.
Yeah.
So,
I need to get hold of Tony. I just finished reading his book not too long ago, and brilliant book, brilliant. So
I think my mind is still back on this, like, where are we all going? Where is this whole, how are we unfolding this? But yeah, it's always the question of the hour.
Do you
And
find
I will always come back to saying that, you know, if we're doing our own work, we're only contributing to the lightening of the timeline and the co-creation of the world we want to inhabit here.
Mm.
You know, like all the depravity that I mentioned with the twinning and all those the sick minds that have been engaged with this kind of sordid programming. There's a ceiling and there's a limit to how long that can carry on. For how long and how much can you do that? And I really think that the programs, things have shifted with the off-world arena too. I mean, I'm not any kind of master of knowing all that's going on out there, but I think there's also a shift with the change of energy in the solar system and what is playing out there, which of course in many ways is for, you know, shifting what's going on for humanity on this planet.
I think the sun activity has a lot to do with, I mean, that's just been, you know, I don't want to say record breaking and get, you know, over the top about it, but it certainly has been consistently increasing. And I think that in itself helps people to start to come into alignment or awareness of what these trauma are. Are you seeing that more and more people are starting to come into SSP memories, especially over the last 6 months? Have you noticed a wave of more people?
I think I'd be biased if I said yes, because I don't know if I could be that objective, because that I am out publicly with my own story. People seek me out for help with their story. So yes, I notice it, but there's a reason for that. I don't know. I mean, it's again, the ripple effect, like we talked about this somewhat at the conference, like you have a conference like that, it sends a huge wave into the collective of energy and starts things opening for people who were at the conference. But I also think, you know, okay, we've matured, we're more sophisticated, we can work with this material more skillfully now as some kind of collective evolution. And things do kind of divulge from the collective subconscious. So we're coming, I want to say, like coming of age with all of this and resource to handle what's coming up. Yeah, I mean, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I feel like, especially in the last 5, you know, I could go based on my own experience, but I certainly had a lot of, and I want to make a special sort of moment just to thank you, because as my memories started to come online, I know I was only ready to digest like piece by piece, pocket by pocket, and that discerning element of this, is this mine? Am I like attuning to someone else's memory? Because I can merge psychically with so many people, and like, you know, so it's like that discernment of like, is this real? Is this mine? Like, and you know, you were the person who supported me going through that, and I can't thank you enough, because I didn't really have anyone else that I could go to, and it was just, you know, to have sessions with you was so validating of what I already thought and felt, but to have someone else say it, you know, out loud, it just gives that okay, that processing. And you know, it's not a huge pocket of work that I do. I know that for you it's like very condensed. Mine's sort of in the realm of partnership, and I think a lot more people have come forward recently that are going through recovering abduction memories, whether they are current memories or from childhood. I think there's a lot of sort of more galactic ET type of awareness being filtered through, which kind of makes me excited. Like, I hope they don't run, well, I don't know where I sit on Blue Beam, if it's gonna be something they'll play out or not, but I'm like, can we just like get this show on the road and just like all out in the open? But I think, yeah, I you know, like you, I kind of think my reality is a bit skewed because I deal with this day in, day out, so I just assume that everyone
yeah I mean, there are days when I just feel like, oh my God, we have so far to go. But I also look, like I said at the beginning, like if you would have mentioned ETs to me how many years ago, and I would have been like, yeah, whatever. You know, I woke up. Look at how much I woke up. Like, really? Now I'm talking about all of this openly in public on YouTube. So there's hope. There's so much hope.
Well, I mean, I had a dream like 12 months ago where I saw rows and rows and rows of soldiers returning, or that's what I was told telepathically in the dream.
Mhm.
And I was shown that my role was to like merge my light body with them to reactivate their soul essence, to start to bring their energy back into, or their consciousness back into their body. That was like 12 months ago. And then I think since that time, I think a lot of people have found me, and I think I've done that through sessions. And I certainly love to understand the energetics of how, you know, I've been shown some pretty cool things of like, I had to sort of compare notes and like ask people, because I'll see things in my dream space. I'm like, what is this thing?
Yeah.
So it always like surprises me that, yeah, there's always a reference point for these things that I could not have known. You know, like I saw some tech that was worked on in Mars, which was used to almost like fragment the soul. It was like a spinning thing that kind of fractal, like it was the process of like fractalization of the energy of it, splitting of the soul or consciousness. And I had an experience earlier in the year where I was like using that in reverse with people. Funnily enough, I woke up very sick the next day, and I was told that because of the bleed through, I was going through radiation poisoning, and then all my hair started falling out. Yeah, I mean, that stopped now, thankfully, and I'm in the process of regrowing. But you know, when I guess the reason for sharing that is like, that gives me hope that there is like this process of rebuilding, and there's, you know, people like yourself out there that can hold space for others to come into that. And I guess that moves into my sort of wrapping up questions, is like, what would you say to people if they are starting to come into awareness or traumatic memory of being put into the programs, or, you know, the twinning process?
Yeah. I mean, it probably goes without saying, but make space and a lot of gentleness for yourself, like, and just be with whatever's coming up. Without, this is hard for us humans to not judge what's arising, because we'll go into an emotional field pretty quickly, and that's normal. But just to be like, give yourself space to be in the process and let it be what it has to be. And of course, like reaching out to other people, if that's a possibility.
Did you find like journaling or like what sort
of? God, yeah. When I moved, Alisha, I had like the heaviest objects were boxes of my notebooks. Not furniture. I don't keep furniture, but boy, I keep my journals. Yeah, that's been my therapeutic remedy, and also how I started channeling. You know, it was journaling for 30. I've been journaling for 30 years. Wow. Yeah, so I write everything down, and it's how my own book transcript is coming about, my own story. It comes. I was going to ask
you. Please tell me you are putting it all together. And
it's a few. You know, there's a few books. Some of it is about my multidimensional work, and some of it, you know, there's a few things. It's not just about SSP and the programs. It's sort of threaded with some. It might be a few books, channel material, and so on. But yeah, it's hard to give a prescription like, what do you do when the shit starts hitting the fan? It's going to look a little bit different for everybody. You might feel like you want to just drive your car off the end of a cliff. You're going to feel kind of fucked up, but maybe just saying it just blank and raw like that, it's going to feel fucked up, and there's nothing wrong with you. Yeah.
Being really open and honest with where you're at, and knowing that that's okay.
Yeah, so much allowance and compassion for whatever mind state or emotional state you might be working with. And like you said so brilliantly, that's a reminder, you know, can you write it down? Some people that works really well for, and some not so much, but I always recommend it. Or you could video, you know, or excuse me, audio. Maybe you speak it into a recorder just to get the words out. If you don't have somebody to talk to, it can also help to speak it somehow. Get it. up and
brings
out.
it into form. It like it moves energy, and it kind of, I don't know.
Yeah. So you're less cycling around in this that cyclical kind of thing we do with the egoic mind. We're just like a rat chasing its tail. Like we're just going to keep going with this thing. Yeah, like you said, get it to the energy to move forward. And it might, some people's process is really different. I've observed with, different clients, like people digest things at different rates, and to like, again, to respect whatever your process looks like. You might feel like crawling into a hole, and you might feel really liberated. Like some of my worst memories were followed by exhilaration because I was getting free. And getting free, I'm not like going around with this like bag over my head anymore. I'm like, oh, like if you go back, I always tell people, go to my YouTube channel and look at the first video I ever made in May of 2020, my first, public outpouring. It's quite precious to me now. It's very tender and nervous and disheveled in a way. And look at me now. It's 2.5 years later. That's not that long. It's like a total transformation. Like this will happen for you. It will bring your life back. It will not destroy your life forever. It's just part of the beginning that looks like that.
Yeah, and such a good reminder, because I think when you're in those pockets, it seems like you're never going to come out of it. But it's like if you can have that little bit of light and say, like through this, I'm going to transform, and uncovering or healing trauma is going to bring me back into wholeness. It's going to perhaps maybe bring on some gifts that I didn't know that I had, or get me more aligned with the purpose of what I'm here to do, and it kind of makes the hard times worthwhile.
Yeah. I mean, transformation is messy. I'm always going to say that. It's not like all light and love. It's like being in a swamp sometimes. I mean, it's like that, but it gets better. At least from my own experience, I will say, just what I've noticed.
And are you still running the support groups?
I'm not right now. I had to kind of step back from so much like external stuff that was demanding my attention. Yeah. So I had too much going on. They may open up again in the future. We'll see. But for now, they're on hold. Yeah.
So you're offering the Akashic records. Can you run through like some of your sessions?
Yeah. A lot of what I do is readings through the Akashic field. There's also galactic attunements and like coaching, intuitive coaching, starseed coaching, and quantum healing sessions, past life readings, inner child. The inner child session work is really potent, especially if you were a child abductee. This can be really interesting, and just in general, it helps us. It's a kind of soul retrieval work that helps to bring pieces and parts back. I do some light language sessions for people, individualized light language sessions, and astral journeys.
I love light language.
A bunch of different things. You can just go to the website, RebeccaRoseBarfoot.com. Yeah.
And the links will be down in the description box. So.
Yeah. And people can also check out my YouTube channel for the whole series of Bringing Light to the Darkness, which really details in a quite profound way, personal and intimate way, that series that talks about the programs in my early life and so on.
Yeah, very, very in depth. So I've put also Rebecca's YouTube channel link, and I highly recommend going and viewing from start to finish if you're sort of just catching us now and you're not familiar with Rebecca's full story. It's there's so much in it. It's heartbreaking. It's like it brings up a sense of awe and just the resilience of the human spirit. So I can't thank you enough for putting yourself out there and the work that you do. It's just beautiful. I never thought I would have the strength to do this, to divulge all this. So I guess I keep saying that, like, if I can get this far, I believe that other people can too. Yeah. So before we wrap up, is there anything that you feel wants to come through that we haven't covered or haven't shared? Have you had any connection with your counterpart on the light ship? We have. And I feel his presence, it's sort of an interesting conundrum of
I've had to really make a journey with that, because here's this like upper dimensional being, and then like, it's like how we see ourselves in this sort of sniveling like human role down here in 3D, trotting through the muck and mire. Yeah, really had to go places inside myself to see my own light, so that I can and understand my Andromedan aspect that is with him, so there's an ongoing journey there, and I really don't speak too much about it. I think, and you said this before we got on, is there more to unfold there? Absolutely more to unfold. So it's interesting, and I might have said this before in my YouTube channel, like the theme of personal relationship, personal intimacy, is one of my deepest wounds, one of my most horribly dysfunctional places from everything I've experienced and, from my earliest life. And it's one of the things that I'm most keen to salvage, because it's one of the things that makes being alive, like being human, so special. And this time, maybe this ties in really well with what we've been talking about, like to bring that full circle back in, like, hey, I can trust people. They're not all going to betray me. They won't kill me. They won't, blah, 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 whatever the narrative, the wounded narrative is. So I'm working really hard with that. I know Tyrion is part of that. So he represents that whole beautiful struggle kind of on a daily basis. Yeah.
It brings so much lightness into my heart. And I was having this conversation the other day, is I truly believe that whatever our core wounding is, whether it's hurt or betrayal or loss or abandonment, I think we kind of design our soul's path so clever that if that is our soul's core wounding, we have experiences in the first half of our life that will help facilitate the process of dislodging and dismantling all of that, so that we can move into the second part and have the opposite experience. So I think
that's so true. Yeah, you said that so well. That is absolutely positively correct. Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
So I look forward to your, tracking and keeping in touch and seeing how that journey unfolds for you, because I think there's a lot of beauty in terms of the healing that you've done and how far you've come, and then what's in store, what's next. So
yeah. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, and thank you for all you offer this world too, and your you do offer a lot of vulnerability and notes from the journey that are useful to other people. I know you know that, but saying I've appreciated that so much also, like the modeling, that you bring here. Yeah. Okay.
Well, thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, everyone, for watching. I hope that this has helped you in some way. And, if you do need support, you can, all the details will be in the description box below. And until next time, stay in center through the eclipse phase, and be there and support for other people if you have the capacity to. So sending much love to everyone, and we'll connect with you soon. Bye.
Bye.